then she fell over, and I brought her back, and then I pushed her some more, and then she fell over again, and that's when she hit the floor.
A call for help.
They're advising this patient has been assaulted. They're requesting law enforcement on scene.
Turned into a domestic violence case. That then turned into a death investigation.
Why did you take those photographs?
It needed to be documented because the cops didn't show up to do it.
Can we talk to you for a few minutes before you head in about...
No, sir. What would you tell the sheriff if he was standing here today?
Get your together.
A family is demanding answers, accusing a South Carolina sheriff's office of not investigating allegations of domestic violence after a 911 call 3 months ago.
The dying woman made those allegations hours before she died. Here's Chief Investigator Jody Barr with a cry for help, a Queen City News investigation.
Darlington County 911, what's the address of the emergency?
Darlington Road.
And what's your name?
David Pridgeon, Pridgen.
And tell me exactly what happened.
My wife just passed out. She's laying on the floor, sir.
And is she responding appropriately?
Yes.
Okay.
She was sitting there, and I was pushing her because of her feet. She couldn't pick up that one leg, her left leg. So I was pushing her, and she passed out in front of me.
David Pridgen says he was doing what he did every day, caring for his disabled girlfriend.
I just told her, I said, baby, are you all right? She said, yeah, I need to go to the bathroom. I need to pee real bad. So I kept pushing her. She fell over again. I mean, I had to literally jump out the way because she would have fell on top of me.
A stroke years earlier left Susan Perkins paralyzed on her left side. She relied on Pridgen for her full-time care. That day in June, when Susan was alone with medics.
And once they got her in the ambulance, that's when the police showed up.
She told a different story about what happened just before that 911 call.
Why is law enforcement needed?
The patient was assaulted.
Delta 6 dispatch. They're advising this patient has been assaulted. They're requesting law enforcement on scene. The initial call came in, and we were advised that the female was passed out.
Show me around.
Medics rushed Perkins to a nearby hospital. The pair of deputies who showed up stayed behind to question David Pridgen.
They came in and spoke to me.
What did they ask you?
Just asked me what happened.
Pridgen says the deputies left. A few minutes later,
That female went with EMS. Can you find out which hospital she went to?
Oh, affirmative. They're en route to Carolina Pines.
one of those deputies radioed in, wanting to know where medics took Susan Perkins. But her family says they never saw that deputy again.
This is pictures of Susan at the hospital at Carolina Pines. This is the knot here.
You took these photos?
Yes, I did. Her eye is swollen, as you can see. She said she was hit in the eye also. She told me exactly what happened, that she fell, he fell on top of her, he stood up and hit her.
In the face?
Yes. She told me that. She told the medics, she told the cops, she told everybody at Carolina Pines the exact same thing, and that she wanted to press charges.
The incident report shows Perkins told medics and law enforcement David Pridgen hit her. Deputies also saw the same injuries Crowley photographed. Looking at the bruise on Perkins' head, it doesn't look like she was slapped. Either she fell and hit her head, or Pridgen hit her with a closed fist, the deputy wrote in the report. Yeah. The deputy also told Crowley an investigator and a victim's advocate would follow up, but that, the family says, never happened.
They were hooking her up, checking her out, and she told me exactly what happened, that he was trying to help her to the bathroom. She fell, he fell on top of her, he stood up and hit her. That was Saturday night. Sunday morning, supposedly he was taking her to the bathroom again. She fell, don't know how long she was down. That's when he called EMS.
So she told you this herself?
Yes, she told me exactly. She told everybody, me, the cops, the medics, everybody at Carolina Pines. She said that he hit her. She kept saying it over and over and over, and that she wanted to press charges.
Crowley says she and her family stayed by her aunt's side for hours. Along with documenting the injuries, the family says they called the sheriff's office to send an investigator.
So you made the call to the sheriff's office from the hospital room?
Yes.
With her beside you?
Yes.
And no one answered that call?
No, nobody came. Nobody came.
What do you think about that?
I'm upset. They should have done their job. They should have came to the hospital and took her statement. If it had just came and got her statement, we could have got justice for her, even though she's deceased. We could have got justice for her.
The following morning, 21 hours after that 911 call, Susan Perkins died. She was 61 years old.
What message do you think they sent Susan Perkins in her final hours?
You don't matter.
Coming up.
She made the allegation that an assault occurred. They have an absolute duty to investigate that accusation.
Why would she say that in her final hours?
I don't know.
You don't want to talk anything about it?
No, sir.
What would you tell the sheriff if he was standing here today?
Get your shit together.
When Cry for Help continues after this.
What made me call is because she fainted and passed out. I mean, well, she didn't pass out. She just fell out the chair and everything.
So she fell out the chair and was laying on the floor there?
Right there in the kitchen.
Can you show me?
Throughout our 35-minute interview with David Pridgeon.
What are you looking for here?
The search warrant.
Over and over again, he denied doing what Susan Perkins accused him of hours before her death 3 months ago.
I've never hit her, never assaulted her or anything. I've never put my hand on her, never hit her. I would have never hit her. I'd love her to this day. I've never assaulted her, never hit her, never slapped her or anything. I've never hit Susan. I would never want to hit Susan. No, it never happened.
In no way?
No. Okay. No way, shape, or form.
911 calls from the home were not rare. Dispatch records show 51 calls in the past 5 years. Half were medical. The other half were for law enforcement. County dispatch records show 8 domestic disturbance calls, and the sheriff's office filed a report in only 1 of those 8. We asked the sheriff whether those reports exist, but Sheriff James Hudson never answered us. Some of those, Pridgeon says, were heated arguments.
Oh, yeah, we've had domestic calls and everything. She would call the law, or I would call it because we would argue, you know. But other than that, you know, physically, no. There was no physical between us two.
I could hear her in the background.
The sheriff's case file shows deputies didn't know Susan Perkins died, not until Kim Crowley called them shortly after Perkins' death. The only evidence showing a deputy at the hospital was 3.5 hours after she died, when a deputy photographed her injuries. 4 hours after Perkins died, David Pridgeon was sitting in a sheriff's interview room.
Again, that's what's so odd about this is that Ms. Perkins would make that statement and you say it's from out of nowhere. I'm just trying to understand why she would tell law enforcement that.
I don't know, but they took me down to the station and they interrogated me for maybe 2 hours.
The Homicide Task Force pointed out conflicts in Pridgeon's statement, noting he first said he drug his girlfriend to the living room after she passed out, then changing his statement to he helped her to the living room. And investigators noted Pridgeon claimed he called 911 for Perkins a few times over the weekend, but the report shows investigators found that did not happen. The final note from the Pridgeon interrogation: David Pridgeon was not upset over his girlfriend's death.
During the interview with David Pridgeon, he did not appear to be distraught or upset over the death of Susan. The main concern of his was getting home so that he could smoke a cigarette and drink beer.
Do you agree with that?
No.
Deputies took Pridgeon back to his girlfriend's house after the interview and handed him a search warrant for the home. The sheriff's office took these pictures and seized Susan Perkins' cell phone, but the report shows deputies never opened the phone up to look for evidence. The Darlington County coroner ordered an autopsy for Susan Perkins. Dr. Angelina Phillips noted the injuries to Perkins' face and head, but after finding blood clots in her lungs, the pathologist determined the manner of death was natural causes. The autopsy report showed no connection between these injuries and Perkins' death.
Darlington County 911, what's the address of the emergency?
A week after the autopsy and the day before this interview, Sheriff's Investigator Bradley Tart called Kim Crowley.
And he said that there is reasonable doubt to arrest him. They could arrest him, but once it went to the solicitor's office, there was nothing that he would be able to do because Susan's not here to give her statement.
Investigator Tart wrote because there was only one statement by Ms. Perkins that she was assaulted, and due to Ms. Perkins' death, I could not follow up with her to obtain another statement or more evidence. Because of that, Tart told Crowley it would be impossible to gather enough evidence to get a conviction and that arresting Pridgeon would only result in a non-conviction. Investigators closed both the death investigation and the domestic violence case that day.
So that's consistent with someone that fell, but it's also could be consistent with someone that was struck in the head and then fell.
We took Susan Perkins' file to Dane Phillips, a Columbia defense attorney who's handled countless domestic violence cases.
She made the allegation that an assault occurred. So at that point, you have a criminal complaint. It's not an official written document, but she had made that accusation. The law enforcement was aware of it. They have an absolute duty to investigate that accusation.
Phillips says Perkins' statements captured on the body camera recordings is evidence and could be used in court.
What we have here is a potential dying declaration. So the first question I'd want to know is, did the investigator reach out to the solicitor's office and ask for an opinion on that?
We confirmed with the Fourth Circuit Solicitor's Office. No one from the Sheriff's Office consulted them for a legal opinion.
If that was not done, that would be very troubling. I think that would be tragic on behalf of certainly the decedent and her family.
Phillips believes the county needs to review this case, and that new review should include a prosecutor. Good morning, Sheriff. Darlington County Sheriff James Hudson would not talk with us about this case, so we found him in the Sheriff's Office parking lot. Can we talk to you for a few minutes before you head in about...
No, sir.
You don't want to talk anything about it?
No, sir.
What did your investigators do to investigate the allegations of assault in Susan Perkins' case the 24 hours before she died?
They've done their job.
They did their job?
Yes, sir.
You have evidence of an investigation happening?
They've done their job, sir. That's all I can tell you.
Well, this family says you guys never showed up.
Family hadn't contacted us.
Well, your investigator told this family that they couldn't investigate this or prosecute this case because the statement was given and the victim was dead. And you're satisfied with that?
Case is closed, sir. Thank you so much.
Minutes after we left the sheriff, his investigator called Kim Crowley.
It's kind of a strange thing. This morning, we had a reporter that showed up at the sheriff's office and spoke to the sheriff. And Jody Barr, I'm just going off of what the sheriff was telling me and everything, but he gave the indication that y'all weren't exactly happy with the outcome of the case.
The investigator told Crowley multiple deputies looked over the case file in June and determined because no one took Susan Perkins' statement and because she died, there's no way they could prosecute a domestic violence case on David Pridgeon.
We went through it as with a fine-tooth comb, and if I was able to charge him, I absolutely would have. I promise you that, because I 100% believe that he was abusive towards her. It's not what you know, it's what you can prove in court. So I can know that he was doing it, but I have to have the evidence to back that up. When I was handed the case, she was already deceased. So I didn't have, all I had was a video recording of her saying that he assaulted me. I went to the autopsy. I explained to the pathologist what I was looking for, and if there was any kind of indication that an assault would have caused her death. She said that there was no indication that an assault would have caused her death. These blood clots were there, and it was unfortunately just a matter of time, and it just happened to be that time.
And that's how she ended up at McLeod.
Kim Crowley knows nothing in this report will likely change any of this and has one reason for going public.
The sheriff's office needs to do a better job. Action should have been taken that day, not the next day or the next day, that day.
What message do you think they sent Susan Perkins in her final hours?
You don't matter.
We asked to see the body camera video of the 911 call to Susan Perkins' home, but Sheriff James Hudson and the county attorney's office would not give us that video so we could show you or Perkins' family that recording. We also asked to see the recording from the David Pridgeon interview, but the sheriff's office wouldn't even tell us whether that interview was ever recorded. I called solicitor Will Rogers to ask about this case. Rogers says he's reviewing the case file now, but his review would only look into whether a charge could be filed related to the assault allegations only. The solicitor says his review will not get into whether the sheriff's office did what it was supposed to do in the 24 hours after Susan Perkins' death. And we'll keep you posted on the solicitor's decision.